Well, hello again. This is Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and this is the Common Constitutionalist weekend video podcast that you're currently watching. And I'm out on location because it's turned out to be a pretty decent day. Hopefully it'll hold out. It's been raining for a long time up here in New England, but we'll take it when we can get it. So we're going to be talking about one topic and one topic only once again. And this is going to be about Chelsea Clinton. Yeah, it's going to be about abortion, but it's going to be mostly about Chelsea Clinton, her idiotic statement. It's the Clintons. Man, they just won't go. They're like a bad penny. They just keep showing up. So that's what we're going to be discussing today on the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. You're watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. So this video podcast, I've entitled it, You Can Put a Price on Human Life. Turns out. And that price apparently isn't nearly as much as anyone would think. Certainly isn't as much as I thought. So it turns out that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree as far as Chelsea Clinton is concerned, because she's turning out to be about as heinous as her mother and her father, but mostly her mother. I think her father is, I don't know. I mean, he was a bad dude and whatnot, but I don't think he had evil in his heart, and it seems like Hillary simply just does. And it almost seems like Chelsea is fashioning herself or modeling herself after her mother, and that's going to work out well if that's what she chooses to do. Way to go, Chelsea. All right, so anyway, most of you have heard what Chelsea said recently, or at least heard that she said something positive about abortion. Yes, positive about it, because it's such a positive experience, don't you know? So last Saturday, lil-Chelsea, we'll just call her lil-Chelsea, spoke at a hashtag Rise Up for Roe. I mean, as if they need any help killing babies, but I digress. So last Saturday, lil-Chelsea spoke at a Rise Up for Roe event in New York, where she and other pro-abortion leftist women rallied against Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation to the Supreme Court. Of course she did, naturally, because Brett Kavanaugh is now the devil, apparently. So if you haven't heard what she said, or what her screed was, more like it, here you go. Quote, "Whether you fundamentally care about reproductive rights and access rights," not even sure what that means. Because these are not the same thing. Okay, never really thought about it. If you care about social justice and economic justice, agency, you have to care about this. What do you have to care about? Abortion, evidently. Yeah, well, I care about a lot. Whatever. Okay. It is not a disconnected fact. This is a fact, of course, because because Chelsea's saying it. It's not a disconnected fact to this address T-shirt of 1973 that American women entering the labor force from 1973 to 2009 added $3.5 trillion to our economy. Right? This is her. I'm still quoting her. This ain't me. I'm quoting her. Still quoting. The net new entrance of women that is not disconnected from the fact that Roe became the law of the land in January of 1973. No coincidence, apparently. So I think whatever it is that people say they care about, I think you can connect to this issue. Yes, of course, because everything on the left is connected to their sacrament, abortion. And according to her, that because all these babies were aborted, it added, and the women were able to work instead of having to stay at home, pregnant and barefoot, and working in the kitchen for their husbands. Instead of that, they got to go out into the workforce and add another $3.5 trillion to the national economy. All right. So let's just sink in that. Let that sink in a bit for you. That dead babies equals GDP or whatever. All right. So let's do the math real quick. All right, because I just want to demonstrate just the absurdity of lil-Chelsea's statement here. $3.5 trillion divided by 60 million babies killed since Roe. That's an estimate. I mean, it obviously varies. Could be as much as 63 or 65 or as few as 59 million. Okay, now that's about as much as all the communists put together killed throughout history. So yay for us. All right, we've surpassed. We're number one. We've surpassed the communists. Good boy. Good job. So we're going to do the math here. $3.5 trillion added to the economy divided by the 60 million babies that were killed since Roe, and that gives you a net amount of about $60,000 per baby. That, according to Chelsea Clinton, is what a human life apparently is worth. So now we know a human life is now worth 60 grand. Certainly not as much as I would have thought, and certainly not as much as advertised. For the cost of a human life. So now I did a little bit of research, not much, but just enough to make the point here. The U.S. median economy as of 2017 was between $39,000 and $49,000. All right, so that would mean a human life is worth about a year and a half of work life, or a maximum of about 20 months tops. So that's what a human life is worth, about a year and a half to 20 months of employment. That's how much it's worth. Okay? So now we have a dollar value on human life. Yay for lil-Chelsea. Now, all this, I'm not making light of it. This is an abhorrent thing. But think about it. These are the same types of leftists that want government single-payer health care for all. Okay? Which, as we know, will include, of course, death panels, right? We were warned of death panels, and they will happen. They're happening in England. They're happening in all these socialized medicine countries because the government can't afford to buy everybody health care and maintain it, so they have to pick and choose and say, like Barack Obama said to an 80-something-year-old person or a person with an 80-something-year-old parent, that they wouldn't get that heart surgery. Just give them a pill and have them sit over in the corner and die like a good comrade. That's basically their line of thought here, and that's what all the leftists think the same way, including evidently lil-Chelsea. So these are the same people the put the price tag on human life that want the single payer all, which of course, like I said, includes death panels, and the death panels determine how much a life is worth before spending the government's money. See, it's not our money anymore. Once the government gets it, it's their money to spend how they see fit, and we don't have any say in it. And it's not much that I don't know why that's any different from death panel. Okay, a bunch of bureaucrats acting as a death panel, or a single individual, the mother, acting as a death panel. It's capital punishment either way you cut it. Really doesn't make any difference. So after the break, I'll tell you about the flip side of all that money that flowed into the economy because women got to murder their children legally. And that's basically what they didn't actually do the murdering. They just condoned the murdering or authorized the murder of their children. Unless, of course, you believe that you have a Buick or a Volkswagen or a blender growing in you. It's a human life growing inside of you. Once you conceive, that's what it's going to be. It's going to come out to be a baby. So if you kill it in the womb, you're killing a baby. All right. You're not crushing a Buick. You're not disposing of a blender or a Cuisinart. That's what it's going to be. It's a human life. So I don't want to hear any nonsense about it's just some lifeless mass in there that you're disposing of, like the old hamburger you found in the back of the freezer that's freezer burnt and you can't eat it anymore. So whatever. So after that, we're going to take a break real quick, and we'll go into the rest of this nonsense.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby!
I am back. Now, like I said, the flip side of all the money that flowed into the economy because the women got to murder their children legally, Chelsea said it added about $3.5 trillion because the women got to have abortions, 60 million abortions or thereabouts, and that added about $3.5 trillion to the economy because it allowed them to go out and work instead of having to be tied home with a child. As Obama said, punished with a child. I don't want to punish with a child. Yeah, that's what he said. Don't kill the messenger. So, to that point, the Federalist writes, I found a little article on the Federalist, and they write, quote, consumer spending drives the economy, unquote. And I think we obviously can all agree with that. The consumer spending, for the most part, drives the economy. Quote, again, quoting the Federalist article, when a mom buys groceries, she not only feeds her family, but also supports the careers of everyone who works at the grocery store, unquote. And that's also true, but I'd add that she also is supporting, he, or whoever buys the groceries, is also supporting every industry that supplies that store and so on down the supply chain line. So it's not just the grocery store, it's the people that that build the grocery stores, the people that the maintenance people that maintain the grocery stores, the equipment that you have to buy in the grocery stores, the maintenance of that equipment, everything on down the line to the most inconsequential stuff, all supports the economy by you buying groceries, or the woman who has to buy groceries for her family because she didn't abort them all. Okay? So, quoting again the Federalist, the Department of Labor's 2016 report on consumer expenditures found that the average American adult spends just under 60 grand a year, unquote. All right, so I guess I'll have to take your word for it on that. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's the Department of Labor, which is the government, so hey, you gotta trust it. If you can't trust the government, who can you trust, right? So you also might be thinking, if you were listening to me, hopefully you're listening to me and following, and assuming you are, that is, how's this all work? If the average salary is around $45,000 a year, how could the average spending rate of an average adult be 60 grand a year? Well, you got to remember the 60 grand number accounts for all adults, including the gazillionaires and billionaires and millionaires and everyone else that spend a crap load more a year than 60 grand, and so that's accrued in or added in, and it all is a big mishmash, and so it ends up to be about $60,000 a year. All right, so anyway, the Federalist continues, quote, does that number sound familiar? Okay, I think so. It's roughly the same as the price per child for the 3.5 trillion generated in the last 40 years. So the author, she is exactly right, the one that wrote this, that 60 grand number sounds eerily familiar to the 60 grand number that Chelsea Clinton puts on a human. That's the cost of a human life. So we spend about as much as a human life is worth per year, each adult. Yeah, this isn't sounding too morbid now, is it? So assuming that 60 million, what do we got here? Assuming that and I'm still quoting, assuming that the 60 million babies murdered would have started spending this way at 18 and lived to the average age of 78, they would spend more than $200 trillion in their lifetime. That's money supporting businesses, driving industry, and creating jobs, unquote. So, if you didn't abort all these people, and they started spending money at 18 and spent money, each adult, until 78, you would add $200 trillion to the economy, not the poultry, a chicken? Not the paltry $3.5 trillion that Chelsea loves to tout, evidently. So even if you started the clock, say 18, you're not going to spend 60 grand a year on average. You're going to add to the economy, obviously, and you're going to have to spend on groceries and everything else, all the incidentals and housing and everything else to support the economy overall. But even if you started, say, at 25 instead of 18, that's still well over $150 trillion added to the economy over that same period, if you didn't abort all these children, all right? So the left might come back and say, well, not everyone would make that kind of money, so counting 60 million babies all chipping in isn't a fair comparison. That's absolutely true. So let's do this. Even if 25% of them grew up to be productive members of society, you'd still have over $50 trillion added to the economy, as opposed to aborting 60 million babies, having women go out into the workplace and adding 3.5 trillion. 50 trillion, even a quarter of the people were productive members of society, spending on an average of 60 grand a year, a quarter of them, which is reasonable, I think, more than reasonable. That's 50 trillion added as opposed to 3.5 trillion. This ain't rocket science, folks. So any way you cut it, those numbers dwarf the $3.5 trillion that Clinton claimed. And if every baby could have just, now listen to this. This is they end this article with, and if every baby could just have lived a year as an adult, choosing life would still outperform choosing death, monetarily speaking. So remember back when lil-Chelsea was actually lil-Chelsea, when she was President Clinton's daughter growing up in the White House? And remember how it was always said that if anyone criticized Chelsea, that was completely off limits, just like the Obama daughters and whatnot. Evidently, it's not the adult children of of Trump, although they can just take fine care of themselves. Plus, they've injected themselves into politics, so that's off limits for them. But the Obama daughters, and I agree, if you're growing up in the White House and you're just a kid, off limits. But not anymore, not with Chelsea, because she's waded in headfirst into the political arena here. And considering the exposure she's garnished, and boy, oh, I really don't want to say this, it seems like she's got her sights set on a political career. And just what we need is another freaking Clinton to contend with. I just think, like I said in the beginning, they're like a bat. They just don't go away. Just Clintons, just go away. You had all the money in the world, just go the crap away. Nobody wants to prosecute Hillary. Nobody wants to bring her down. Nobody wants to send her to prison. There she belongs. She should be indicted, prosecuted, and perp walked and into the slammer for darn long, at least as long as Manafort's going to be there. At least probably 5 times as long as Manafort, considering what laws that she's broken. But she just won't. They won't take the hint and go away. We're giving you every opportunity to legally just get the crap out of town before somebody changes their minds and decides, okay, fine, we are going to indict you, Hillary. Just get the crap out of town and take your silly family with you, and let's just not hear anything about it anymore, all right? But again, that's too much to ask, apparently. So I'm going to take another real quick break, and I've got one thing to, I don't know whether I want to talk about abortion like this. Maybe I'll just end it on this note. I think maybe I will, because I don't want to get that far into the weeds about abortion and life and health and all that other nonsense. Then maybe I'll save that for another day. That's a mighty heady topic, and this is a political thing. As much as abortion can be a political thing, but with the left, everything's political, we know. So, I think I'll just leave it alone and end it here. So this is Brent Smith. I'm the Common Constitutionalist, signing off once again. And the skies are starting to threaten already. So I got to hightail it out of here, guys. Y'all have a blessed balance of the week, the weekend and the week. And I'll talk at you next week, one way or the other. See ya.
Thank you for watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast.